Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome, dear students. In this class of BS English, your course title is Semantics. Course code is ENGL 4140. This is your course instructor Tayyiba. Let's start our today's session. Okay, as far as the agenda of today's presentation is concerned, today I'll introduce some basic notions in semantics. And it's very important for you people that you have to master all these notions, because all these notions, they will keep recurring throughout your course and you people will find these terms again and again. So students, hopefully after listening to today's session, you will be able to understand the concepts regarding utterance. Then our second focus will be on sentence, particularly declarative sentences, then interrogative sentences and imperative sentences. And in today's session, we will also discuss a very important concept, that is proposition. Do you know what is utterance? We can say just as conventional signals like blowing of a whistle. We can say that blowing of a whistle, it may have different meanings in different situations. Students, similar is the case of a piece of language or pieces of language. We can say different pieces of language can have different meanings in different contexts. Okay, let's discuss three different events. Number one is the case of a beggar. A beggar who has not eaten all day says, "I'm hungry." Secondly, a child who hopes to put off going to bed announces that, "I'm hungry." Now the third is the case of a young man. A young man who hopes to get better acquainted with one of his co-workers and intends to ask her to have a dinner with him. Begins with the statement, "I'm hungry." So the three events obviously have something in common, yet just as obviously they are different, because they indicate different intentions. They are liable to be interpreted differently. Why? Because the situation and the participants are different. And each of three speech events that we have discussed is a different utterance. And students, there are different ways to mark an utterance, to write an utterance, but an utterance is written mostly with quotation marks. And each utterance contains the same sentence. And if you people will find in the books that the sentences, they will be mostly written in italics. So we can say an utterance, it is an act of speech or writing. It is a specific event at a particular time. And not only on a particular time, but also on a particular place. And it involves at least one person. The one person who produces that utterance. But there might be more than one person. So an utterance happens just once. A spoken utterance happens, and then unless it may be even recorded as we are recording nowadays, then it ceases to exist. A written utterance is intended to last for a short time. In the case of, just as we can talk about shopping lists for instance, or much longer as there are so many cases in your books. So we can say that an utterance is any stretch of talk by one person before and after which there is no silence on the part of that person. An utterance is the use by a particular speaker on a particular occasion, as we have earlier discussed, and a particular piece of language, such as a sequence of sentence, or there may be a single phrase or even a single word. Students, utterances are physical events, and you know that events are ephemeral because utterances die on the wind. And linguistics, it deals with the spoken language. So, in today's session, we have a lot to say about utterances in our session. But now, in the next slide, there is an exercise for you people. Okay, dear students, now look at this slide and decide whether the following they could be represented as utterances or not. Number 1 is hello. Number 2, not much. Number 3, utterances may consist of a single word, a single phrase, or a single sentence. They may also consist of a sequence of sentences. It's not unusual to find utterances that consist of one or more grammatically incomplete sentence fragments. In short, there is no simple relation of correspondence between utterance and sentence. And the fourth one is simple alphabets are there: P, X, G, O, T, M, G, T. Now students, take the first one, hello. So we can say that it can be taken as an utterance. The answer will be yes. Then not much, it can also be taken as an utterance. And if we talk about the third one, so I will say yes. Although we can say it's a very comprehensive statement, and you can say it's a little bit difficult to say in one utterance, and particularly without pauses. And the number 4, you can say this is a string of sounds or alphabets, so it's not an utterance. These strings of sounds, they can be from any language. Okay, let's talk about a sentence. That what is a sentence? We have already talked about utterance. Students, a sentence, on the other hand, it's not an event. It is a construction of words in English language or whatever your language is. So it is a construction of words in a particular sequence which is meaningful in that language. In our previous slide, we have already talked about 3 utterances and 3 cases. Students, each of 3 utterances contains the meaning of the sentence. And each utterance, we can say, has an extra meaning or meanings because of the circumstances in which it occurs. So we can say the meaning of a sentence is determined by the language. Which language? That is, you can say, or that is known to all people who have learned to use that language. And it is the meaning of the individual words and the meaning of the syntactic construction in which they occur. So, we can define a sentence. A sentence is neither a physical event nor a physical object. It is conceived abstractly. So, this is the characteristic of a sentence, that it is abstract. It is not physically realized. A sentence is a string of words. String of words put together by the grammatical rules of language, because we can form a certain sentence by using rules of grammar. A sentence can be thought of as the ideal string of words behind various realizations in utterance and inscriptions. So this is the definition of sentence. A sentence is defined as a string of words. So we can say a given sentence always consists of the same words and in the same order. Any change in the word or in their order makes a different sentence. Okay, now look at these examples. Helen rolled up the carpet. Helen rolled the carpet up. Both are different sentences. Now look at the second example. Sincerity may frighten the boy. Sincerity may frighten the boy. There is a similar sentence. We can say it would make sense to say that an utterance was in a particular accent, a particular way of pronouncing words. However, it would not make strict sense to say that a sentence was in a particular accent because a sentence itself is only associated with phonetic characteristics such as accent and voice quality through a speaker's act of uttering it. Students' accent and voice quality belong strictly to the utterance and they are not related with the sentence. If we talk about the meaning of an utterance, the meaning of an utterance is the meaning of the sentence. Fine. Plus the meaning of circumstances, the time and the place, and the people involved, and the whole background, their relationship to one another, and what they know about one another. All these circumstances, we can call it a physical, social context of an utterance. So, in the meaning of an utterance, plus the meaning of sentence, plus all the circumstances, place, people, all these things are involved in the meaning of utterance. We cannot say that all utterances are actually tokens of sentences, but sometimes only of parts of sentences, for example, phrases or single words. Okay, a sentence is traditionally defined in a way that it is a grammatically complete string of words expressing a complete thought. Students, this is a very traditional definition, but it's really hard to arrive at a better one for our purpose. It is intended to exclude any string of words that does not have a verb in it, as well as other strings. So the idea is best shown by all these examples, which you people can see in this slide. I would like a cup of coffee. It is a sentence. Coffee, please. It's not a sentence. Okay, now look at the third example. In the kitchen. In the kitchen is not a sentence, obviously. Then, please put it in the kitchen. This is a sentence. Utterances of non-sentences. For example, we can talk about short phrases or single words. These are used by people in communication all the time. People do not converse wholly in tokens of well-formed sentences, but the abstract idea of a sentence is the basis for understanding even those expressions which are not sentences. And students, in the overwhelming majority of cases, the meanings of non-sentences can be best analyzed by considering them as abbreviations or incomplete versions of whole sentence. Students, here is a short practice exercise for you people. Now you have to tell or that which of the following utterances are tokens of whole sentences and which are not. Number 1, John, whether it's a sentence or not a sentence. Who is there? It's a sentence or not a sentence. Then the third one is mine. Is it a sentence or not? It's mine. Again, whether it's a sentence or it's not a sentence. Where shall I? It's also a sentence or it's not a sentence. Now you people have to decide about all these utterances or tokens. You people have been given 5 minutes for this activity. We have discussed so many things about sentence and utterance. Now here is a one question. Why distinguish between sentence and utterance? Why we are distinguishing? Because it is important to recognize what meanings are communicated to us in a language and which meanings we derive from the context in which language is used. Students, it's important to distinguish between linguistic meaning, what is communicated by a particular piece of language or pieces of language, and utterance meaning means what a certain individual meant by saying such and such or something in a particular place at a particular time and to certain other individuals. Okay, the utterance. Our visit to the factory was a wonderful experience. This utterance, it can be spoken as a joke, or we can say it can be spoken sarcastically or as a straightforward report. There are so many other possibilities. Okay, the sentence. Our visit to the factory was a wonderful experience. It has none of these meanings in itself. Or if we put it differently, it has potentially any of these meanings. We can say that an utterance, it is often a part of larger discourse. Larger discourse means a conversation. It can be a formal lecture, it can be a poem, it can be a short story or a business letter, it may be any official letter, and there are so many other possibilities. A spoken discourse is any act of speech that occurs in a given place and students also in a given period of time. And if we talk about a written discourse, we can say a written discourse may be the record of something that has been spoken, or it may, you can say, originate from the purpose of being performed aloud, like you can say like a play or a speech, or it may exist without ever having been spoken or intended to be spoken. Like we can quote the examples, such examples as just like articles and books. So the linguistic context of an utterance can make a difference of meaning as well as the social context. Okay, what is a proposition? A proposition, we can say it is something which serves as the premise or conclusion of an argument. Okay, if I say that Coco is a primate, all primates like daytime television and Coco likes daytime television. These are all propositions. Students, a proposition can be either true or false. And we are concerned about English language. So I would like to say that in English, we may think of propositions as roughly like positive. Propositions can be negative factual statements or sentences as well. The parallel between sentences and propositions is not absolute, however. Okay, we can say that a sentence expresses an infinite number of different propositions depending on the values of the diacritic expressions. For example, I, you, and this afternoon, etc. I'm quoting one example here. I want you to know that your behavior this afternoon had nothing to do with my decision to drop out. Students, for each assignment of reference to the diacritic expression, a different proposition results. Similar is the case with the statement or sentence I have said, Coco likes daytime television. Can only be considered a proposition as long as the referent of the noun Coco has been fixed. Or you can say only if we know who Coco refers to. So, who Coco refers to, can we know whether a proposition in which he is mentioned is true or not. Strictly the notion of the proposition, it belongs to logic. And even we can find it in so many mental terms as well. Because a series of experiments, the experiments that have been conducted by psychologists, students, these experiments have shown that people are very bad at remembering the actual words of utterances. And about 20 seconds after hearing or reading an utterance, all people remember is only what is its content or gist. And the actual words which have been used cannot be remembered accurately. So, keeping this thing in mind, the propositions that we have discussed would only be one possible representation of this remembered content or gist. So, we can say, according to this definition of the proposition, that a proposition is that part of the meaning of the utterance of a declarative sentence which describes some state of affairs. And the notion of truth can be used to decide whether two sentences express different propositions. The meaning of whole sentences involve propositions, and the notion of a proposition is, you can say, students, it's central to semantics. What exactly a proposition is, it's, you can say, much debated by semanticists, and the definition we have discussed in our previous slide. A proposition is that part of the meaning of the utterance of a declarative sentence which describes some state of affairs. Now we can say the state of affairs typically involves persons or things referred to by expressions in the sentences and situation or action in which they are involved. And in uttering a declarative sentence, a speaker typically asserts a proposition. What is the rule behind this? The notion of truth can be used to decide whether two sentences express different propositions. Thus, if there is any, you can say, conceivable set of circumstances in which one sentence is true while the other is false, we can be sure that they express different propositions. Students, now we will do a little bit practice in this slide. Consider the following pairs of sentences, and in each case say whether there are any circumstances of which one member of the pair could be true, the other false. Now look at the first one. Harry took out the garbage. Harry took the garbage out. Number 2, John gave Mary a book. Mary was given a book by John. Number 3, Maria loves Tony, or Tony loves Maria. Number 4, Dr. William killed Janet. And the other pair is Dr. William caused Janet to die. Okay, students, as far as the first one is concerned, Harry took out the garbage. Harry took the garbage out. We will say no. These are always either both true or both false. We cannot imagine any situation in which one is true and the other one is false. The sentence number 2, John gave Mary a book and Mary was given a book by John. Then no. Number 3, Maria loves Tony and Tony loves Maria. So we can say yes, one could be true and the other false. Now number 4, Dr. William killed Janet and Dr. William caused Janet to die. Yes, for example, in this situation where Dr. William is the person who caused Janet to die, but not intentionally. Say by sending her to a place where unknown to him, or she was attacked, someone else could in fact be guilty of killing her. So, true proposition corresponds to the fact in the ordinary sense of the word fact, and false propositions do not correspond to the facts. Students, we have earlier discussed our definition of proposition and we explicitly mentioned declarative sentences. But propositions are clearly involved in the meaning of other types of sentences as well. We can talk about interrogatives, which are used to ask questions, as well as imperatives, which are used to convey orders. Normally, when a speaker utters a simple declarative sentence, he commits himself to the truth of the corresponding proposition. That is, it means he asserts the proposition. And by uttering a simple interrogative or imperative, a speaker can mention a particular proposition without asserting its truth. Now take this example in the slide. John can go. In saying John can go, a speaker asserts that the proposition that John can go. And the second one, can John go? So, in saying this, he mentions the same proposition, but merely questions its truth. So we say that corresponding declarative and interrogative and imperatives, they have the same propositional content. Propositions, unlike sentences, cannot be said to belong to any particular language. And students, sentences in different languages can correspond to the same proposition if the two sentences are perfect translation of each other. Dear students, we have discussed so many things about utterances, sentences, and propositions. And the reason behind is this, that all these concepts are at the bottom of all talk that is related with meaning or that is related with semantics. So we have to make it clear when we are reading something or we are hearing something we have to make it clear whether we are dealing with utterances or sentences. Now, to this end, I will try to summarize the relationship between all these notions, between utterance, sentence, and proposition. So, I'll discuss different terms in such a way that anything that can be said of propositions can also be said of utterances, but not necessarily vice versa. And anything that can be said of sentence can also be said of utterance, but not necessarily vice versa. And we have already discussed so many examples. Students, we can talk about a sentence being in a particular language, and it's also sensible to talk about an utterance that is being in a particular language. But one cannot talk of a proposition being in a particular language. Now look at this chart. What you people have to do, I'll help you people in doing all this. Fill in the chart below with plus signs or minus signs as appropriate. Thus, for example, if it makes sense to think of a proposition being in a particular regional accent, put a plus sign in the appropriate box, and if not, put a minus sign. Now, can be loud or quiet. An utterance, yes, we will put the plus sign here, that an utterance, it can be loud or quiet. And if we talk about the sentence, that a sentence can be loud or quiet, we will say no. Then we will put a minus sign. And same will be the case of propositions. We'll also put a minus sign in this one. The second thing is, can be grammatical or not. So utterances, obviously, they can be grammatical or not. So we will put a plus sign in this box. Now, sentences can be grammatical or not. Of course, yes. Then we will again put a plus sign. And if we'll talk about the propositions, we will say no. Then we will put a minus sign. Then the next thing is, can be true or false. Obviously, utterances, they can be true or false. So we put a plus sign. And sentences, they can also be true or false. So again, there will be a plus sign. The propositions, they can also be true or false. Then again, there will also be a plus sign in the box of propositions. Now, in a particular regional accent, yes, an utterance, it can be in a particular regional accent, as we have discussed in our previous slides. So in this box, we'll put a plus sign. And sentences, they cannot be in a particular regional accent. So we will put a minus sign in sentences, and same is the case with the propositions. In this box, we will also put a minus sign. Now, in a particular language, obviously utterances, they can be in particular language or languages. We will put a plus sign here. The same is the case with the sentences. They can also be in a particular language. So again, a plus sign here. And in the case of propositions, we cannot say. So there will be a minus sign. Students, can the same proposition be expressed by different sentences? Yes, we can say that the same prepositions, they can be expressed by different sentences. And if I ask that can the same sentence be realized by different utterances? Utterances means that have different utterances as tokens. So again, the answer will be yes, that the same sentence, it can be realized by different utterances. So I've tried to present a summary of all these notions and concepts in this slide. Okay, it's useful to envisage the kind of a family tree relationship between all these notions that we have discussed. You people can see in this diagram that is presented in the slide. For example, a single proposition. It could be expressed by using several different sentences. Okay, if I say Prince William will inherit the throne, or the throne will be inherited by Prince William. And each of these sentences could be uttered an infinite number of times as well. So again, proposition, then sentences, and then so many utterances. We can say that a proposition, it is an abstraction. And this abstraction, it can be grasped by the mind of an individual person. And in this sense, we can say that a proposition is an object of thought. But students, we cannot equate propositions with the thoughts. What's the reason behind this? Because thoughts are usually held to be something that is private. Thoughts are personal, or you can say mental processes. Whereas propositions are concerned, we can say propositions are public, in the sense that the same proposition is accessible to different persons and different individuals. They can grasp the same proposition. And one more thing about that, a proposition, it's not a process, whereas a thought, it can be seen as a process. That is process going on in an individual's mind. And unfortunately, the word thought may sometimes it is used loosely in a way which includes the notion of a proposition. For instance, one may say, the same thought came into both our heads at the same time. In this case, the word thought is being used in a sense quite like that of the word proposition. So the relationship between mental processes are thoughts, and abstract semantic entities, for example, propositions, and linguistic entities, that are sentences, and actions, for example, utterances. All these are very complicated notions in semantics. Now I would like to present an overview of the whole session. Students, in this session we have discussed different notions and concepts including utterance, sentence, and proposition. Actually, we have discussed all these things in our previous sessions, but you can take this session just for your reinforcement. So, as far as utterances are concerned, we have discussed that utterances are physical events. And utterances, they die with the wind. And linguistics deals with with regard to utterance with the spoken language. Then we have discussed the definition of sentence, that a sentence is neither a physical event nor a physical object. A sentence is conceived abstractly, and it is a string of words, and string of words put together by a grammatical rules of language. And a sentence can be thought of as ideal string of words behind various realizations in utterance and inscriptions. So students, semantics, it's concerned with the meaning of non-sentences also, such as phrases, or we can talk about incomplete sentences, just as much as with the whole sentences. But it's, we can say, more convenient to begin or to discuss all these things about the whole sentences. And when we talk about the whole sentences in this regard, the notion of the proposition, it's very important. You can say it's central to semantics. What is a proposition? The definition of the proposition that we have discussed in today's session is this one, that a proposition is that part of meaning of the utterance of a declarative sentence which describes some state of affair. So, then we have discussed that a proposition is just like an abstraction, and this abstraction, it can be grasped by the mind of individuals or persons. So I told you people that proposition is an object of thought, but do not equate proposition with thoughts. This is what I said in the previous slide. Because thoughts are something private. Thoughts are something personal and mental processes. And furthermore, I told you people that a proposition, it's not a process, whereas a thought can be seen as a process. So we have already discussed a notational way of distinguishing between sentences and utterances. And I told you people that the sentences, they can be written in italics, and the utterances, they can be written in quotation marks. So this is all about today's session. Thank you very much, students. Now I would like to acknowledge the resources. The source material of this presentation has been taken from Semantics, a course book that is written by Herford, Hesley, and Smith. And the next one is Introducing English Semantics, written by Cradler.